Ridley Scott é o diretor do filme mais representativo dos anos 80, Blade Runner, um clássico. Um clássico com um cenário e um senso estético que influenciou toda uma geração. Entre outros grandes temas, Ridley trouxe à tona a controvérsia da liberdade feminina com o filme Thelma e Louise. Obsessivo, obstinado, perfeccionista, ele é acusado de levar toda a equipe à loucura com as suas exigências. Uma coisa é certa, ele é um dos poucos diretores que consegue manter sua personalidade dentro de Hollywood e que faz de cada projeto uma grande aventura, como nesse seu último filme, 1492, A Conquista do Paraíso. Ridley Scott, your movie 1492 set out on a voyage into the unknown. Is making a movie an adventure like this?
Always. I can think that filmmakers are fortunate in doing their job, that in a way there's not much left to explore. So I think filmmakers are all explorers, and that's how I regard every film I do as a kind of exploration of, the unknown. You're going to create, the only difference is you're going to create the world when you get there. But yes, it's an exploration.
But have you ever been afraid to create something bigger than life? I mean,
It's a process which occurs over a number of years, where it's to do with confidence. And I was fortunate when I started feature films that I already had a lot of time as an experience in the process of handling, film and cameras and creating environments and doing advertising, commercials. Commercials at that particular point in England, in London, were of a very high quality, and I think were probably some of the best that were being done in the world. And I did commercials for 10 years before I even touched the idea of a feature film. So by the time I started the idea of this film, which my first one was a film called The Duelists, that whole process, I was fully prepared in the craft of getting what I wanted on screen.
Have you ever thought that you might have something in common with Columbus in this sense? I mean, you get the money for the trip, you have to control the whole thing.
It's exactly like that in, obviously, broad strokes. I mean, clearly his problems were far greater than my problems. But there is a parallel to that. There's even a parallel to, finally, the dissatisfaction of the studio, who will then come in and take everything away from you. So there are all kinds of parallels in the process of that, yeah.
I think you were such a great director, and at this point in your career, what is the pressure like on the first weekend when the movie is released?
Well, I've never quite got over that, or got used to the idea of, I hate previews. And I don't really like the first moment that a big audience looks at the film. I don't like that. I immediately go to a bar.
But do you feel the pressure? I mean,
absolutely, I feel the pressure because there's a value in previewing. In that once you've finished the process of making a movie and you've been through all the preparation, the shooting, and the post-production, and then the music and everything. You do get tunnel vision, and sometimes this preview can be valuable in pointing out something very simple that isn't connecting, isn't communicating. But those previews are very, very nervous-making because they nearly always find something. And then the key factor to remember about a preview is that it is only a tool, an instrument that you can either decide to use or not use. And that's where the most difficult decision becomes, because then it comes to, am I right or are they right? So,
but are you still worried about of course you are, but the commercial success of a movie?
Yeah, I'm worried about, worried is the wrong word. I mean, I would like the film to be a commercial success, because it's a fairly large budget, and therefore there's a cash investment in the film. That's on a business level. On an artistic level, of course, one wants the film to work or communicate on the levels that you hope that it would. But that's the artist in me, because the artist, in a sense, in the end of the day, really isn't interested in the money.
Yeah, and
the most important thing is that the film connects and that people get it.
what could a flop mean to you?
You mean as far as my career is concerned?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I'm not sure it's going to make that much difference. I think they know I try hard.
Yeah.
So all my films, I don't think you really suffer in Hollywood. We're talking about Hollywood now.
Yeah.
I don't think you really suffer in Hollywood through the process of endeavor, of turning out a film which is a good level film, is a good movie. If the movie doesn't work, I would say it's fair to say today that you're not going to have your career removed from you. There are too many, studios respect the idea of a well-made movie.
Your films are very different. What drives you to do a certain project?
Intuition. There's no plan. There's no. If anything, the only plan is to not repeat what I've just done.
Your films are very different. What drives you to do a certain project?
Intuition. There's no plan. There's no. If anything, the only plan is to not repeat what I've just done. The only plan is to have a complete change of pace, a complete change of world. There is no thread, and I don't even try and find a thread with what I'm doing.
You don't want
No.
to have one.
No.
But what do you want your movies to do to people?
Well, the more movies I do, I'm moved from what I'd call doing mainstream movies. Gradually began to feel that films really, it's a waste of a movie in a way if the film doesn't do something or isn't about something or about someone, as opposed to just being what I'd call mainstream pulp. In a way, that's so. Listen, we have to have pulp. We have pulp in literature. We have good pulp in literature. We have good mainstream movie pulp. You understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, sure. But you want your own expression. I mean.
I find that I find it much more. At the end of the day, and at the end of all that effort, I may as well be seeking a project, a story, which is about something which will. First of all, of course, entertain, but most important of all, educate in some shape or form, leave something behind with the audience that might change them a little bit in some way.
This is yours.
Yeah.
Blade Runner is back, and it's a big success. After 10 years, you're finally able to show your own version.
Yeah.
Do you think is this price you pay for doing an artistic movie in this industry?
Definitely. Oh, yeah, sure. But I've watched some of the European filmmakers function very nicely. When I say very nicely, I mean do what they want to do successfully within their own arena. Successfully means artistically and financially in their own arena, and really have very little opposition. So, and those filmmakers are obvious. I mean, the one specific filmmaker would be Bernardo Bertolucci, Jean-Jacques Arnaud, who do the films they want to do, with, as far as I can see, very little involvement of an outside.
And do you think here in Hollywood there is more difficult to?
Absolutely.
How can you deal with art and lots of money?
Hollywood is always, I think, a balance of, or even a tension of commerce against art, right? And clearly filmmaking it sometimes is art, and mostly is communication and entertainment. Nothing wrong with that, because that communication and entertainment, if it's successful, is what runs the Hollywood machine. If there was no Hollywood machine, I wouldn't have an industry to function. So what I try and do within the Hollywood system is clearly have an eye on my film must play. But I try and put in as much as I can of myself and see if it slips through the net.
This is always the old conflict between,
sure.
you know.
Yeah, Blade Runner slipped through the net. In a way, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in Alien. Alien's a B movie, you know. Mm-hmm. But the original Alien, I think, I was very happy with, because even though it was criticized as a character, a piece that was thin on characterization, that wasn't the point of the exercise. Alien was the old dark house, in parenthesis, B movie, and I read the script, I liked the script, and I figured I knew what I could do with it, because I loved the dynamics of the adventure. Mm-hmm. So what I then bring to bear to that is my artistry.
But you always put your dark side in the adventure.
Yeah, I love the dark side. I love the dark side. But
tell me about it.
What I've discovered is Americans don't like dark. They don't like melancholy. Melancholy and dark are really the same.
How can you live without it?
Well, because you're European. The Americans like to be entertained, and they don't like to be depressed. Right, guys?
You don't know what you mean.
But melancholy isn't depression. Melancholy is actually a very romantic notion. When I say romantic, I don't mean love sex, romantic. I mean a sex romantic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a romantic notion. Mahler is melancholy.
It is a mankind thoughts.
Yeah. Musicians like Mahler.
Yeah.
Melancholy. There's a great beauty in melancholy. And I just thought that Blade Runner at the time, and Alien at the time, was a very melancholy movie. Alien is a rather slow-moving movie, which has its own omnipotence, which makes it... I thought the Alien was beautiful.
Blade Runner is, I think, is considered a classic. You know, it's a film that's going to last for sure. It influenced the whole generation. And do you think maybe the movie, when it was released, was too ahead of its time?
I think yes. I think so. I mean, I don't think I was aware. I mean, I wasn't aware of that at the time. I was just making the movie. And I was bringing, it was the first time I was in Hollywood, functioning as a director in Hollywood, and I was driving into the Warnerback lot every day. So, and they didn't know me from a hole in the ground, even though had a lot of time in Europe as a kind of filmmaker on commercials and even my first two movies. They still didn't know me. And so I had a lot of time explaining what I wanted. And of course I got short, and of course I got finally impatient, because at a certain point in time, I'm not used to having to explain. And that's not an arrogance. It's just to do with the fact that I think when a film happens, there has to be a driver of the bus.
Sure,
and there can't be 10 drivers. We can't have endless discussions. We've got to say we go that way, and the selected people who are involved in the film go with it. If they don't like it, they shouldn't be even part of the process. So I went through a lot of that, and I was determined not to let it go, which made me rather unpopular at that particular moment. I'd seen the environment 18 years before in Hong Kong. I'd spent some time in Hong Kong and always thought that this was a kind of future shock. And then following that, going to New York, I found there was a similarity. And so I simply took those two worlds, put them together, projected a little bit into the near future, which is always a little more scary because it's right on your doorstep. And they found it extremely melancholy and rather oppressive.
It's unbelievable.
That's the thing that worked against it. But now it's taken up a kind of, I think it's been helped by rock videos, by, clearly it's influenced the area of, you know, a lot of rock videos and even other films. And I said, I know what's happening. I can see it. I can see the influence, and it's amusing. It's kind of nice actually that happens. And so it's gradually that plus video cassette and then Laserdisc, so people can then sit at home and watch it. Because it's on a smaller screen, the weight of it, the oppressiveness of the background of the overall canvas gets pushed back a little bit. So the story comes forward a little bit, so it's gentler. So there's been a preparation ground for them. And because they decided they liked it on the smaller screen, Warner Brothers clued into that and decided, let's try
Maybe
again.
they're gonna...
Exactly.
So you're getting better.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes in Blade Runner is that confrontation between Tyrell and Nexus 6. Mm-hmm. And the creation talking with the creator. Do you think this would be the way man would face God?
Wow. I think that's actually one of the best dialogued scenes in the film, because it shows great, I think, wit. It's a really amusing scene, because they talk about the question of life and talk about the question of longevity and death. So yes, I mean, in a way, it was a scene with God. He's the creator. Mm-hmm. And then what becomes rather dark and amusing is how the replicant tries to suggest ways of prolonging his life, and God says that no, that can't be because we did this and we did that. Yeah, so I think it's actually it's the best scene in the film. Yeah.
Are you a religious person? Do you believe in God?
I think there's a possibility, yeah. I'm not sure. As I get older...
I'm still thinking.
Yeah, I'm still thinking. I'm still thinking. This can't be... I mean, in very simplistic broad strokes, for us to be sitting here right now, if you take Hawkins' idea of the Big Bang, mm-hmm. for this world to be created is so unlikely. The possibility is so impossible that it must have had some help along the way. Because at a certain point, all the combinations,
this could
happened.
Be a memory.
Something. It can't be as simple as that.
Yes.
Because also, isn't it Hawkins who believes that we in fact are the only inhabited...
Blade Runner is already a legend, and the shooting also became a legend. They called Blood Runner. Why? Why? Was it so painful?
No. No, there was an article in the LA Times, I think, last week. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I read it and I was thinking, wow, did that happen? Where did they get all this information from? I can only remember that it was a long shoot. I get tunnel vision when I'm shooting, because I think in a way you should, you know, on your particular subject. And I think a lot of people were forced to, or not forced, obligated mm-hmm. to work in a certain pattern that they were not used to. And so I would have to go through that on a daily basis, saying, no, we're going to do it this way. And because also I was entering a system in Hollywood where there is a strong hierarchical system, even with crews, and I was meeting that for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like it because I'm used to working my own camera, and it was suddenly not the way I worked, so it would suddenly be not my film, or the film would become diluted, mm-hmm. right? And I didn't want that to happen, so that's where the tension occurred. But I think most of these people, what was interesting about that article was that what came out of it is that they all really enjoyed it.
Oh,
you know?
For sure.
Because they could all talk about it so vividly.
Oh,
today.
they know it's a great movie, that's for sure.
So I think they enjoyed the experience.
Yeah.
But I find most crews at the end of it, the process on Columbus, it was very difficult.
Yes.
Physically much more difficult than Blade Runner. We're shooting in 120 degrees in Costa Rica. We found fer-de-lance and coral snakes on the set every day.
Yeah.
You know? At the end of it all, I meet them occasionally in London, they're still talking about it. They like it. It was like going to war. You don't often get a chance to go to war and not get shot at.
In a perfectionist person like yourself, what do you think are your weak points?
Being a perfectionist. That's a weakness in a way. Makes it impossible for other people.
In a perfectionist person like yourself, what do you think are your weak points?
Being a perfectionist. That's a weakness in a way. Makes it impossible for other people. Whereas I find, for instance, I'm neat to the point of almost being, I guess, Japanese. Is there any Japanese in here?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's easier. It's easier, but that makes, you know, existing with other people extremely difficult.
But is there anything that you would change, you would like to change?
No. No.
So it's not that difficult.
No, I've just decided that's what it is, you know, and I'm not really going to change.
How do you deal with the critics?
The critics, you cannot ever guess what they're going to say, and so they have their right to criticize. And at the end of it, all you must remember as a filmmaker is what you feel about it. So whatever happens, you must remember what you feel about it. So the answer finally is to read no press, good or bad.
There is a wonderful moment in 1492 when Columbus talked with Sanchez, and he said, there is a big difference for life. There is a big difference between us.
Yes.
You know, I did, and you didn't.
Yeah.
This is a big answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't say it, you did.
I'm not a critic anyway.
But, yeah, that's an answer. There's an answer for a painter, you know. He says, you hate my paintings? Okay. I like them. I'm obsessed with the process of painting. I'm fortunate to do that, rather than building a career on criticism.
Thelma and Louise is a very interesting journey. And what did you learn about women doing this movie?
I think I'm pretty... I didn't have to learn much, because I think I'm pretty good with women. And in the sense of... I've always, well, for instance, I have another outside career in this process. I have commercial advertising. I've got 3 companies in London, and LA, and in New York.
But what advertising
tips about women? And they are all run by
women?
women. All of them run by women. The presidents of all the companies are women. And what's interesting, we've got no female directors, but all the bosses are women, and all the employees in that company are women. And that's been so for 25 years. And I found, I like working with women, because I find that women are more dedicated to the process of what they're doing, and consequently even have more energy. And I like that. So I find that much tougher than men. So I don't employ women because I think I'm going to win. And because, you know, if you're running any company or business, or if you're making a film, which is, you should never employ down. When I say down, in other words, employ somebody you feel you can control, because if you employ up, that's going to make you feel insecure. I always employ up, so I get, you know, quite smart women.
You talk also about revenge. Do you feel that women have been so victimized that they need revenge?
Well, revenge is no. I don't like the idea of revenge. I think revenge is always a negative. But sometimes it's the only solution, unfortunately. But revenge should be avoided at all costs. I think what should happen is that men should change.
And did the producers want to change the ending as
Never.
they did? No.
No, they just said, do you want to change the ending? I said, no. He said, you got a better ending? He said, no. I said, okay.
Oh.
So we shoot it.
In your movies, there's always a sort of impossibility in the relationship between a man and a woman. Is it really so impossible?
Between men and women, I think relationships are extremely difficult, yeah.
In your movies, there's always a sort of impossibility in the relationship between a man and a woman. Is it really so impossible?
Between men and women, I think relationships are extremely difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
They're, in some respects, a really enormous test. A human relationship is the toughest test because, in a way, it's not logical. Well, when you're talking about a relationship in marriage and family and things like that, the family is easier to keep together than the relationship. There's all sorts of factors set in. Either she thinks you're impossible or you begin to just grow apart, which is when the argument that time makes the bonding stronger isn't really logical. Time can frequently make that bond, weaker. So that process of a relationship, I think, is the most difficult.
You were supposed to aim at the heart.
You have that project, Amazon Vision, but the Indian chef Paulinho Payakan went through this scandal because he raped a girl in Brazil. How do you feel about it?
Well, they believe he raped the girl. Well, I had a screenplay completed on Payakan and Posey a year ago. And so that's in the pipeline now that, in fact, I may do that next. This unfortunate incident with Payakan, we're still tracking it to trying to find out what exactly happened. Because I met Payakan briefly, and what I hear about the facts doesn't altogether make sense.
Thank you very, very much for your interview.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Ridley.